kind of hard to have those, facilitated sessions.
I agree. We usually adopt Kanban for O&M.
There's no learning curve. It's basically a low ceremony version of doing it. So.
Yeah. Can you join again? I had to create a new event.
So I guess I'd open it up to the table. What do we want to use? I mean, that sounds interesting. I haven't done it before. What do folks think? It seems like a lot of folks know Scrum, so that language is going to be familiar. So that would
Yeah,
be
but I do agree
there.
with him saying that we're not going to have like
A sprint.
a sprint planning session.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
unless we have this every month and then at every meeting we go over and do sprint planning. But a month sprint is kind of long,
Yeah.
depending on what our velocity is going to be.
Yeah.
I'm
So
up
it's, yeah.
for Kanban or whatever.
Yeah, for Kanban. What do folks think?
Sounds reasonable.
Something that's more free-flowing does make a lot of sense here, because you're right, we're not going to have necessarily a lot of those others. It would have to be a very modified Scrum in that direction anyway if we did Scrum. So.
And there's no user here for you to do Scrum.
Right, right. Donna said she will come to one or two of our meetings.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we're not going to have that daily or even weekly access. We're going to have to make up this a lot on our own. So we're not going to have your product owners per se. Yeah, that's true. Am I connected?
Right, I had sent you another invite. Try that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question, and obviously in terms of where your requirements come from, are you doing product ideation without somebody who knows the market, the business, or are you floating that through your business owner?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do a chunk of that on our own.
So product ideation based on.
I'm not seeing the
market
invite, Doug, maybe here.
Did you get an invite?
I'm looking. Did you? I apologize. We're trying to get it back connected.
Yeah, first time we've had a network issue. I mean, that is to be expected.
Can you ping me one more time? Oh, it looks like it is on another screen somewhere. Yeah.
All right, I'll send it to those addresses.
2 seconds here, just so. Doesn't want to let me. Ah.
Hey, while he's doing that,
Yeah.
let me ask a quick question of
Please.
everybody, if you don't mind showing your hands. In terms of your programming experience overall, just very curious as to, let's just do 3 levels. Level
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3 being the most experienced, and where you kind of put yourself to level 1.
What means that?
No. Just
Come up?
development overall.
No, that's not the right one.
Okay, who's level 2?
That's not where I'm at.
Consider yourself
What about now?
development.
No? Close it?
Who would you consider
Yeah,
yourself
close it. Let's try again.
hardcore, been doing it since you were on an Atari,
I just sent you like 3 invites.
Commodore?
Yeah, hang on.
The Schnauzer,
So now we know who to go
This
to
one
when it
looks
comes
new.
to hitting the roadblocks, right?
Not raise my hand.
There you go. All right, switching back to you.
Oh man, it's the TV and the TV and the TV.
Yeah,
Showing it?
Awesome.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. How you spell
Kanban, I'm not exactly sure.
it? All right.
Kanban, yeah.
So what about like a requirements management tool? What kind of requirements management tools have you guys used? Jira? That's a lot. Joe, what'd you say, Kettle?
We use cards.
Cards.
Jira tasks.
So I know Jira. A lot of folks using Jira. Yeah. All right. What's that? Redmine? Yeah, I heard of that too.
GitHub's got their own too.
Yeah, it's issues though.
I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
But I know that at some of, I don't
Right,
know
Jira
what
has
Google
support
uses.
for both flavors of
Yep, it does.
Agile.
Yep.
I was going to comment on the entire Atlassian stack
works really, really well.
Yep.
With maybe the exception of Bamboo, which would have to be hosted on like Amazon Web Services or
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I've had really good experience.
Cool.
The better, the more Atlassian you work, the better it all flows together. If you choose to use something like Jira.
Jira, Confluence.
Yeah, I agree.
Good.
Yeah.
You guys good with heading down that path?
Question is cost.
I think we
Yeah.
can get it for free. I'm pretty sure because they give it to if you're open source
Yeah.
and you're free and you're a nonprofit. Either of those will give it to you. And I think we're going to be both.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we can get it free easily.
That then opens up another issues. And that's
We'll get there.
we'll get there. How do you know what I'm talking?
What other issue?
Like repositories.
Yeah, I knew we were going to get there. So, mobile framework, the only one I know of is Cardova/PhoneGap for making an app.
React.
No, to make it an actual app.
Yeah, React Native. Is that open source yet? Same way.
But that would work with Angular, right? That would be if you're actually developing a front end in
Yeah.
React.
Yeah, true.
Right.
They have
We're going to make a native
Titanium.
mobile app, or we're going to build a
Titanium.
Native mobile app, yep.
Titanium. is
Not
one-
native.
Well, it's a hybrid app.
HTML.
Sorry.
Titanium.
Oh, Titanium, yeah, it's a good, but even that I don't think would work with
That's
Angular.
not Angular. Yeah.
It does.
Really?
It's
No.
Ionic is probably the only one.
Ionic is a component framework that runs on top of that, but you still wrap that with PhoneGap or Cardova to make a native app.
What was the reason for making it a mobile app versus a web page?
Well, so if it's Angular, it is going to be a web page underneath, and you could, as long as you made it available, that Angular app, you could hit a URL and bring it up. But the advantage to having it be a mobile app here is, one, it makes it easier for people to load and have an icon on their screen, and it's also going to give us fill some gaps. That's why it's called PhoneGap in terms of persistent storage. So we could use HTML5's local storage to store information, but if we're using PhoneGap, then we can use the SQLite database as well that's resident on the phone. So if folks are going around and they want to synchronize inventory or stuff like that, we could actually operate in an offline mode where stuff works and you don't have to have internet access.
So I think that should be put in the architecture. So that should work both offline and online. That's
I think that's good. Yeah.
So Doug, I'm wondering how much of some of this you can do before everybody really knows what the app is, who the intended user is, and everything else, right? So when you're deploying a mobile application, you deploy it so somebody can get it. You deploy it so somebody can get it so they can use it. And I don't know, obviously, who you're trying to reach in terms of the user, so how broad, what platform they to be on, whether it needs to be obviously cross-platform or whatever. But you're making some of those technology decisions, which is typically driven by who your user is and what device they have. And
Yeah, I think in this case it would just be Android or iOS phones.
those are the two target devices. That should be one of the
But if we consider just building a really good, responsive, mobile-friendly app, with a framework above that.
That's essentially what this is.
Right.
So with Cardova and PhoneGap, you build a responsive, friendly web application, and it can operate, and you could host it and just do it. PhoneGap just then wraps that and puts the iOS and turns it into a native app, or does the same thing for Android.
Pricing for the CSS and the responsive piece, are we going to use Bootstrap or something?
We'll get to that, yeah. And so that's it doesn't Cardova, which is just the open source version of PhoneGap, doesn't have any restrictions there that I know of. I think you can use just about anything. So if you haven't used that, we've used the Cardova PhoneGap a couple times. We did it for Smithsonian, has an app where they go around and the maintenance guys sync up with their facility management system, and they have to do stuff like check fire extinguishers for stuff and look at power generators and different equipment. And so use the barcode scanner. So they'll sync up with a list of tasks that gets put into the local SQLite database. And we could use local storage instead. So there's lots of things that are still open for, but then they'll go do stuff. When they come back at the end of the day, it syncs up all those tasks back into the node system. In this case, it's using Java. We'll sync up all those tasks with the facility management and say, hey, these fire extinguishers are checked, they're good, and this is the maintenance that's going on.
So if you wouldn't mind, can you describe what Mobile Hope is doing with, or Mobile Hope users are doing with this app, just the way you just described how those users use that app?
Right.
This app is for users to download to do what?
So for inventory management, I think was probably, and so I'm meeting with, Andre and I will meet with Donna next Wednesday and really talk about what are her most valuable requirements. Like if the app did these things, what would be the most valuable things? We had one of those meetings towards the end of last year. And one of those, and then we'll kind of balance that with what we can easily do to get started. Like we don't want to do PII or HIPAA type stuff right off the bat.
Yeah. So well, from what you described, this app is not. I mean, this is not for like the general public. This app is more for people who are working at mobile app to use to run their business.
That would be the first use case. Yes. It would be possible to have different roles in there and to hide a bunch of that functionality and for the community to download it and contribute PayPal, right, or something like that if they want to make contributions. Or if they need to get 70 backpacks full of food and this is the shopping list for what goes in those food, then you could at some point open up this app to the public and they could go in and say, oh yeah, I'll do one of those and here's when I'll deliver it. And here, oh, I see all the things I need to put in it.
Okay.
But you would, if you logged into it as a staff person, then you would see the things that we're talking about, which predominantly, yes, are going to be staff. The use cases that she's laid out that are really important to her, that are going to make a big difference, are things that the staff is going to download and use on a daily basis. And they're volunteers who come in and do a lot of stuff. But a volunteer may come in and be asked to do some inventory work. This way that volunteer could come in, put it on their Android or iOS phone or iPad or whatever, and actually do a bunch of work that's going to synchronize back up to the Mongo database and make them more efficient in whatever they're doing as a volunteer.
So, but that wouldn't that be sort of like a stage 2 then? Right now we're at stage
The
1.
community would be stage 2.
Yeah. Okay.
So stage 1, totally agree with you. Focused on the staff. That's what we're doing. I agree.
Are there any security requirements that requirements could be one thing if there's mobile, there should be security?
Yeah, so we'll get into those. I would say at a high level when we talked to her, I asked that, and she wasn't concerned. She wasn't even really that concerned about the PII or the HIPAA. So I would say right now from the user and what they're doing, they're pretty darn open. I think we're going to bring a lot to it, and we'll definitely want to protect ourselves that no one's going to accuse the meetup of doing something that was inappropriate, whether just from reputation or actually legally. Both. We'll look at both. But right now, the customer's not driving any security requirements, so I would say it's really up to us to make good decisions.
There's a login page or whatever, so hopefully that can.
Yeah.
So there's a contract between the meetup and the non-for-profit?
Nope.
Okay, so when you put stuff on GitHub, if they choose to pull it off and leverage it, I think GitHub is your buffer.
Potentially, as long as we have some disclaimer on there or something
I think
like
GitHub
that.
actually, as a user, them as a user is agreeing to a certain kind of license.
Yeah.
Contributors they're the buffer.
Okay, good. I agree.
I mean, my wife's an attorney, I can have her figured out. But
That'd be nice, yeah. So if we just make this app available on GitHub, and it's not even necessarily, even though they're a customer, we just say it's more kind
even
of
if they
for.
built it with their requirements in mind,
Yeah.
they're agreeing to the GitHub's license to pull it down or whatever.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, I'll double check that. I'll have her read.
Sweet. That would be cool. All right. So there's that. There's the UI. So this is where we got into the Nexus. So we said we want to use AngularJS. There's lots of ways to use Angular. I think one of the big things that you hit on right away is layout, how you want to manage your layout, and component frameworks. So the two that we've worked on, Bootstrap we've worked on a little bit. Ionic is a nice for mobile apps specifically. It's a component framework that's intended primarily for mobile, so it does like push and swipe and stuff like that on the screen. It's optimized for that. Angular Material is a new component library that's conforming to the material design, which is a new UI or UX, what do you want to call it? Look and feel.
Paradigm.
Yeah, paradigm, that's good. But it's very detailed, and the material design is, and Angular material is evolving very quickly as a component framework that does that. So, and what are the kinds of component frameworks, and how else have folks managed UI look and feel with an Angular?
Foundation is another one.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Foundation. That's good. Yeah, absolutely.
If you use Bootstrap, Foundation is pretty easy.
Yep.
There
Good.
is Angular UI that includes
Bootstrap.
and
Yep.
everything in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've used that one too. That's a good one. So, just going to write these down as we go. Kind of capture. What else? Any others? Well, there's not that many that have significant market share.
I know there are two, right? One's the UI Bootstrap, the other is Angular.
Oh, but yeah, not Angular UI. It's Bootstrap UI. Sorry.
One's the UI Bootstrap.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the UI UI Bootstrap.
Yeah.
The other is Angular Bootstrap, right?
Is there, I don't know Angular Bootstrap.
That's a different.
Angular UI.
What's that?
There is actual Angular UI.
That's the owners. They don't, but the product is called UI Bootstrap or Angular Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, Angular
Angular Bootstrap is essentially
one is built by Angular
Power.
Bootstrap.
components
That one,
that
UI
are
Bootstrap.
built in Angular using
Right,
Bootstrap.
Well, and now they've kind of moved now over to this Angular Material project, I think.
Oh, okay.
And Google themselves has moved to Angular Material full speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so those would be ones to look at. And I don't know, what do y'all think? It almost seems like this is something that we could make a bit of an action between now and the next meeting.
Yeah.
And I could put this out and we could look at it. Folks might like to explore it, or we can just make a decision
I guess the
tonight.
question I'd like to throw out to me to try to figure out is, what are we trying to do? Come up with the best, most sophisticated, or to facilitate learning speed, right? Because I see like a lot of technology already. If it's the mean stack group, and we're going to be trying to synchronize stuff in Cordova, and then we're going to be doing this, and this. The stack is getting pretty big.
Yeah, some of those things are pretty decoupled.
Right.
Like you can develop this whole thing without worrying
But
about
to me, though,
Cordova or
if
phone
you're
gap.
looking for ease of learning, Bootstrap is the one to go. If you're looking for sophistication, then probably Ionic is the one to go.
Yeah.
I personally don't care. I've used Bootstrap a lot, but it's you know, anyone that is, I mean, I saw a lot of hands that went up on the ones that had never done development, and if you've never done development, there's some really good content on how to get functional, how to do prototyping, how to create value.
Yeah, those are good points. Those are good points.
My only question about Bootstrap is who has used it on mobile applications?
I built mobile responsive applications for tablets. So
Yeah,
to me,
that would be my question.
And how will it work within
Yeah,
as an
how
actual
well does
app?
it work?
Okay. You know?
That would be my
Well, it's really
I know it's
depends on how
it's
native
kind
of
of
a field you're looking for.
And it's
Right.
you don't want to
Data
use
entry in some of these things. I mean, it's got
also you don't want to
You can
use
figure that
just
out, but-
Bootstrap.
to me, the
That includes
question is,
jQuery.
what is
Right.
Cordova and PhoneGap going to give you? Because that's where you're going to get your.
Yeah, those are
Right,
kind of
that's a
separate.
good
They're not
point.
going to drive anything, but then the components may just work better.
Right.
Like the Ionic components are going to just work better out of it.
So, I mean, I've been doing a lot of work with Angular material lately.
Cool.
And I really like it. It's really interesting. It's rapidly changing.
Yes.
And it's, they're doing a pretty good job making it, non-breaking changes, but I mean, that may change really soon.
2.2.
And, but I've never, I've heard a lot about Ionic, and it sounds like it's solid.
Yeah, we've definitely had the guys at the Smithsonian app I described. They used Ionic.
Yeah.
So I would suggest maybe we look at UI Bootstrap versus Ionic, and we maybe look at, because Angular material is good for folks to know about, and if I was building another
really
corporate
easy.
app, I would probably seriously look at it. But again, from a learning perspective, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'm up for learning. I'm just saying.
Angular
really
materials,
depends on the
the
group.
directives,
I would
those are
go
so
with
easy.
Ionic if you
You
want to
understand
know
directives.
learning.
And it also,
And they'll work with Cordova too. We may have to do a quick spike and see what
you'd have to
works.
choose.
I think Ionic also have they have a mobile web apps or native apps, so you can do quick initial testing rather than creating your own.
Yeah, Ionic requires you to put it in a package structure. Well, Cordova does that we might not like. Like you have to have a
So in the interest of moving along, shall we call that one that we're not going to decide tonight, but we'll maybe do some spikes and have some folks think about it a little bit? And then potentially the discussion forums that we've now got on the meetup could all of a sudden become a lot more valuable. Because if folks want to do a little bit, I'd be interested in doing that. And all of a sudden we can kind of keep, people can participate at the level they want, but if folks do a quick little thing and say, hey, I looked at this and I ran it up, it looks good, or I looked at this and it looked pretty painful around this spot, and here's what I did to look at it, then I think that could get to be pretty helpful quickly. And from a learning perspective, I would find that really valuable.
Can I make one last comment?
Yeah, please do.
So, last comment, Angular material. I mean, if we're interested in learning about Angular,
yep.
I mean, Google is pushing this hard.
Yeah, extremely hard.
If you do not know Angular material, you're going to be behind the curve really soon.
Yeah, that's right. If the objective is to learn,
yeah,
then maybe we should be a little painful, build some muscles. But
Is it being tied up with Angular 2?
Yes.
Yes, it'll definitely go right
If you
into
understand
Angular.
directives in HTML,
Was there pretty much changed a lot?
then you'll understand Angular material.
Yeah, big
All it is
changes.
is dropping tag names with some options on it to create a button that they like.
There are big changes.
It's considered Angular material.
That's kind of called the framework called the mobile Angular UI.
Is it the material?
There's another framework.
No.
All right, so that's good.
Yeah.
So, and we'll get to all those things. We can have some side conversations going on. We're going to table this one. Great conversations. So when we work towards our next meeting, this is one that'll be a great learning opportunity, right? We'll discuss this, we'll drill in, and by the next meeting, we'll decide which way we want to go. If some folks want to do a little bit of drilling between now and then and dig into these and have some discussions on the forums, that's going to be really cool.
Hey, I got a novice question.
Yeah.
So this is like full stack development, right? You got all these different levels of the stack, Mongo,
Yep.
Angular on the front end, and things like that. Is it possible for people to play a role within one section of the stack, or do you have to really learn across the entire thing to contribute?
Oh no, you can definitely. So I would say Mongo's Mongo. I mean, and we can talk about stuff we can do there, but basically we just have to agree generally on the structure. But Mongo, being a NoSQL, whether you like it or not, doesn't enforce a lot. So we can step on each other's toes, but it shouldn't be that bad when we get to the REST services. I'm not worried about Mongo. Definitely you could participate just on the Node side in providing REST services. You could participate just on the Angular side on building app. And really, Cardova is going to give us, the fact that we are a mobile app is going to have some implications, but for the most part it's going to be a pure Angular without a lot of influence from the fact that it's an app.
And the reason why I ask is I think there's some concern about where Angular is going and obviously the impacts of the next generation of Angular or whatever. There's some concern about the learning curve, which I think is valid. Some of those hills are pretty steep. And I know I'm probably more interested in the Node part than anything else. I wonder if people could say, look, if we have a lot on the front end that is going to be steep in terms of learning curve, it takes a more highly technical team, and others want to say, okay, well, I'm just not ready for that. I really came here to really get the experience across the stack, but at the same time, maybe that's one way to do it in terms of having instead of trying to get the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, no, there's definitely. And if you go to an open source project, I mean, you can find any of the features or stuff that's being planned on to work on. And if this one little bit interests you, whether it's like versioning in a content management system, and you go work on that little piece and you create a pull request and you get involved. So I would see us doing that, which would allow us to do exactly what you're talking to, but it would happen almost more organically. People will get involved to the level and where they want to get involved.
Okay.
So I'm totally in sync with that. And so if everything works properly, we'll have a build environment where you check it out and it builds everything. So if you don't want to work on the mobile app, you'll pull it out, build everything, it'll just work. And you'll be able to follow a couple of instructions and have it up and running to be able to test your node work against there. And we'll have tests that just unit tests and functional tests that go directly against that as well. So
you can always poke it out and try out other things, whatever you want. So
absolutely.
It's pretty.
Yep, so part of this will be getting more into just kind of continuing to work the way in open source projects. You can always fork a repository, work on it, you can create a branch to do a spike and try, we might go down the Angular material side and somebody says, I'm going to try out Ionic. So you fork it and you change some stuff and you see what it looks like. And that branch may never get merged back into the original repo. no problem. At the same time, if you want to share that branch with someone else that you're talking about over pizza, we can now have much richer conversations.
I think that sounds killer because at the end of the day, that you don't have to pick one path, and some people lose out, other people don't. Other people don't. You got enough people here. Almost, you got a certain number that stay engaged. I can see why you couldn't do.
Totally agree. Yeah, I see that working really well. So good deal. All right, server side. So we know we're going to be Node.js, and so with Angular, I think I can say that we have to have support REST services. Does anybody know of any other way to support an Angular app other than REST services?
WebSockets.
Okay. I haven't tried that yet, but I guess you could, yeah.
Socket.io.
Yeah.
So have you done that?
Yeah, actually,
Oh, cool.
all of the where I work, that's the vast majority of our communications between UI and backend are over WebSockets.
Are you using
And
Angular on the front end or something else?
Angular.
What's the benefit of sockets over REST?
Push notifications.
Okay.
Live, real-time data.
Cool.
So, which I was going to bring up because we're talking about inventory. And if you're doing inventory and more people, you have multiple people doing inventory at one time, and you need to push notifications to the UI, I think we're going to be talking about WebSockets about. And they're not mutually exclusive.
No, they're not.
So,
Absolutely.
but it's something that we definitely want to think about.
That's
Okay.
good, actually. So we can have a combination of both sockets and this.
Just out of interest, have you tried Meteor? You looked at Meteor? Okay.
I have looked at it. I have not. I just kind of looked at their site. I haven't done a thing with it at this point.
So website, and I'm safe in saying primarily for push notifications?
Yeah, that's what basics are.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. So I think we definitely have want to have a way of providing all three of these capabilities, right? REST services, like WebSockets is great, or some type of way of doing push notifications. And then we need to support talking to Mongo. You can just use the native Mongo driver, or some ways you can raise it up a little bit and get some abstraction to do that as well. Like
Does someone use REST Angular?
What's that?
The REST Angular framework?
I'm not familiar with REST Angular.
So there's actually a whole group that the
Cool.
Angular group. So Angular's not really specific about how you use REST, and there's
Oh, right.
so-
For Angular to call REST services.
right. So there's a whole segment of
Yes.
open source project called REST Angular.
Yeah.
that kind of put some structure to that, so you're not.
So what do they offer anything on the server side on Node, or that's just calling it from the Angular app?
It's all within Angular.
Okay.
The approach, but it puts structure around your REST.
Cool.
So
Cool.
there's 10 different ways to do REST.
Yep.
With Angular, this is the opinionated way to do it that way. But if you're really serious about REST, it's probably a good way to go.
Cool. So we can check that out on Angular. So on the server side, though, how are we going to host the REST services, I think is what we're driving at here. And so what are some of the different ways that folks have done REST services?
Express. We're talking mean stack.
So Express is one.
Well, it's not mean stack without Express.
Yes.
But there are other frameworks that build on top of Express and use Express that you can also use.
You're talking about like a template engine like Jade?
No, I'm talking about Restify, Express, there's Happy, there's, I'm forgetting one.
Well, Happy's Node, the Node version.
I use Express under the hood too.
But it's
The
Node
Restify
runs
and, did I say Restify already?
Restless, but that's for, I don't know if you use it for this architecture.
Is that Java or Node?
Good for Java.
No, that's not, no.
Yeah, you can't.
And then there's, and Loopback is another one that we use that actually uses Express underneath the hood. In fact, the Loopback, Strong Loop guys actually bought Express. So those are all different frameworks for doing it. I mean, you can just use Node.js and not use anything. You don't have to use Express. You can use Express, and it starts to give you more of a framework. It's very unopinionated to provide REST and you code stuff. Restify and Happy. Happy is from the Walmart group, and so it's very well thought through, and there's a lot of people, just because Walmart's one of the most fully baked kind of organizations using Node. Folks will use Happy also because they do so much around security. A lot of people are depending upon Walmart security for that level of security as well. And then there's strong loop, which generates, they go beyond, they do a lot more in that you can actually define your model. So in this case, we could have an inventory item, and we could have, maybe a room, a location, different nouns, concepts, and you can define those in JSON. And then Loopback uses something called Swagger. Anybody heard of Swagger? No. Swagger will actually generate all your REST endpoints for you. So it'll give you your CRUD, your create, insert, update, and delete with your put and all that. It automatically generates all that code for you based off a model, but it also generates live documentation. So it'll generate its own web page that where you can go to, and you'll have your list of all your different REST endpoints, and you can actually try them out. So it's actually a live documentation that goes against your REST endpoints. And we can use Swagger with Restify. So there's lots of different things out there. We've used Loopback on a lot of stuff. I like Strong Loop. I know Chris proposed we should be purists and only do Express so that we're learning things at the most basic level, which is a very valid point. And then there's some of these other things like, Happy's interesting because it is such a mature framework. All of them are fairly low level with the exception of Loopback. Loopback really tries to do a lot for you.
Maybe we'll go with Express and poke it out for other things, at some point. That would be good.
That makes sense. I think that's a good opinion. What do other folks think about just saying, hey, since we're mean, we're going to keep it really simple. We're just going to use Express to write our endpoints right now from the perspective of learning with what the common framework is. And then maybe some point down the road, if we decide to jump into another one of these frameworks, it would not be that difficult.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
That appeals to me as well.
Okay.
By the way,
Anybody have an alternative?
Somebody asked a question. Anybody use GroupMe for group collaboration? Just so you all know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think with Express and Mongoose, you get that ODM framework, and then you also get the REST framework, which have been known to work great with each other.
Yep. And certainly in terms of documentation out there and stuff for us to go learn, there's a ton on both of those because those are probably the first that came along to provide that. So should we go ahead and make that call for our REST services? I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to put this on the
I think there's
Angular.
one binary argument here. That is, there is no happy in me. It's like ISD. It's just not there.
It's not, and the mean's not happy? There you go. There you go. All right.
You can't not happy.
And so we said Express for the REST services in the Mongoose. Does everybody know what Mongoose? How do you spell Mongoose? Does everybody know what Mongoose is? Happy to use Mongoose for Mongo. I think that's.
Has anybody ever done Hibernate?
Yeah.
Hibernate is the Java version of Mongoose. Same thing. You're just object to relational mapping or object to JSON mapping.
So Hibernate does relational, and Mongoose is specifically just for Mongo. There's actually another one called JugglerDB, which is similar to Mongoose, but it's actually even closer to Hibernate in that Juggler supports relational databases and NoSQL databases. So like Hibernate, if anybody's ever gone into Hibernate and you code it against MySQL or Postgres on your desktop, and then you can go deploy against Oracle, and it works actually really darn well. JugglerDB is the equivalent within the node space. But I think for Mongo, Mongoose is the right way because it's nice and simple. It's very proven. Lots of people use it. Cool.
And I have a question. Let's say for the socket, do we need a two-way communication between the socket?
Well, I mean, there are, there's
Socket.io, right? You just use Socket.io.
And there's several different NPM libraries that you can install, or Bower libraries, or it's not really all that complicated to implement from scratch.
Yeah.
So.
But if we just talking about server pushing, there's a built in the HTML file called server send event. Where we build in. But unless you want a two-way communication, that can't connect. If we just want server pushing, try server send event.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would be two-way. I mean, if there's going to be an inventory sort of component, I would think you would be talking two-way WebSockets at that point.
Yeah, the website both the mainly for two-way communication.
Not necessarily. I mean, but yes. I mean,
But
you
if
said-
just one way, just self pushing service and much easier.
that's
Much,
true.
much
Yeah.
So when this thing is, when they're using this thing just for like taking an inventory, they just be, I'm not sure how this would all work, but I guess they would have a local copy of the Mongo database that they'd be writing into? No?
Just be up in the cloud.
We were gonna do
Cache
that.
stuff
But they're-
offline locally.
We were gonna do
go
that.
into.
But I thought somebody said that we're offline.
We could.
But if we were going to do that, we wouldn't use Mongo, we'd use Couch.
Okay,
Or you could just use the SQLite database that's
Right.
embedded into any mobile app.
okay.
So the two things that I've used most, you can do Couch, but you got to install that into your app, or you can use SQLite, which is a relational database that's just locally in any mobile app when you get that as a part of the mobile app, or you can use local storage, HTML5 local storage.
Okay,
Which
okay, I
has
guess we're gonna get that when we get to architecture client.
Yeah, and when we get to the offline, but so when we get to that point, but yeah, we'll have to get there. Okay. Mongo, I don't think there's anything we really need to talk about Mongo, is there? Except that we're going to store stuff in it. So there'll be a couple collections. Most of that will just be defined by the Mongoose mapping from our REST API into Mongo, right? Okay. So agile development process, we said we're going to try the Kanban. I got to learn how to say it now. Kanban. Thank you.
Sounds like a coffee.
And I think we said we were happy with Jira, so I'll get that up and started. Source control. So everybody happy with Git?
Yes.
Good. I don't think we need to discuss that one. So options for hosting Git would be Bitbucket if we went on Atlassian, or GitHub. Jira will work with both. You don't have to go with Bitbucket just because you're using Jira, but you can. GitHub? I would say just because that's where open source projects live, I think that makes sense to go with GitHub.
Eventually, when we plan to do Docker,
If you're going to get the Atlassian stack, you should get Bitbucket because it's all integrated.
It is, and you know a lot of folks that do Jira and GitHub, and it does work really well. Jira has really nice GitHub integration that's pretty much just as good.
Yeah. That would be my same argument, but only because I've never tried to use GitHub with Atlassian, so I can't really speak toward it.
we use
GitHub and Jira.
It works well. Yeah.
yeah,
Seamless.
beautiful.
Yeah. Just like all software.
I think if folks say if folks say there's a NovaMean open source project and they just want to go look and that's all they know, they're going to go to GitHub.
That's true.
And I've already got the GitHub NovaMean account created. So you guys got to take off? No worries.
I'll get a small summary of whether you do get any exceptions.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
She loves to do that stuff.
That would be super helpful. Very good. Look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Yes, definitely. Sorry to.
Nope, totally understand. Okay, so we're going to go with Git on GitHub. Makes sense?
Can you do SVN on GitHub?
No. Automated testing and builds. Who does automated testing with their apps? Everybody? So we're doing a lot of that. What do folks use for automated testing around mean apps? What kind of
Mocha.
frameworks?
On the back. What'd you say?
Mocha?
Protractors.
Protractor?
That's front end, right? Yeah.
That's front end.
And then Jasmine would go for
So
unit testing.
Mocha,
Protractor is
Protractor,
visual testing,
Jasmine.
right?
Yep. Cool. Great. Those are all good. I think those actually are complementary. I think all three of those.
Yeah. Well, Jasmine used to be called Testacular, which is made by the same guy who made
Right.
Misco.
Right. So, and these are folks, if folks do Java and you haven't gotten into this a lot, it's kind of like JUnit or TestNG. it's the same kind of stuff, except in the node space, I think there's a dozen different types of frameworks you can use at least, right? These are the ones I've run across. Any others that anybody would like to talk about?
Has anybody used Jasmine here?
Yeah.
What is your, I guess, not Jasmine, Mocha. Somebody's used Mocha.
Yeah. I have because you set it up.
Yeah. Well, what is everybody's like? Because there's 3 or 4 assertion languages, like should, expect,
Right, so behavioral.
assert. Yeah, so I don't, each has their own syntactic sugar. I don't know whether or not someone had a preference. I guess it doesn't matter. Everybody's on a clean slate here.
Yeah.
So
I think what's going to happen is when we get together next month, we'll work out some of the stuff in the meantime. We'll get together, we'll keep the discussion a lot shorter next time, and we might even break out. So we might have, say, hey, do a couple guys want to focus on the testing framework and get some stuff going, and the rest of us can kind of copy it, and a couple on the REST endpoints, do a couple, maybe even gals, I don't know if that's too optimistic, work on the Angular piece or whatever. And then some of those, the breakout groups, if those are the guys who are working on it, you guys can work that kind of stuff out at that level of detail.
What's good about
and have some collaboration.
Compartmentalized, so you can say, Angular people, you want to go work on Angular, you want to go work on Node.
What about build? What kind of build framework do you want to use?
For continuous integration?
No, to actually build the application, to drive it. Grunt or Gulp?
That. I would say go with Gulp.
I'd like to learn Gulp.
So would I.
Everybody happy with Gulp? Anybody used Gulp? Or are we all learning it?
No, I haven't yet.
I haven't either. I use Grunt too. I'd like to learn Gulp too.
I just know it's coming down the pipe.
I've used Gulp.
So Grunt or Gulp. So Grunt or Gulp is kind of like Ant, except they kind of do Maven too because it's tied into NPM. If you're familiar with Java, Grunt's been around for a long time. Gulp's the new kid on the block. Why is Gulp better? I don't know.
Gulp uses node streams. So
what does that mean?
It uses, so instead of Grunt, which runs tasks synchronously, Gulp uses streams. So it's almost like if you guys are familiar to Unix or Linux background, it's sort of like doing pipes. So you can pipe stuff into other pipes and filter them out until you get so it uses, streams are supposed to be a lot faster because they just handle data and they keep on pushing across.
So is there anything besides faster that's better in Gulp?
It's a little easier to read, I think.
Okay.
But there is a problem, and I've had this happen to me before, is that when some of the libraries, and they have plugins like Grunt does, that will run like your build tasks, and some of the plugins that I've dealt with, they forget to close their streams, so you just have this thing that just stays open, the stream stays open.
So on your continuous build server, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I think Gulp
never exits.
Is what Angular 2.0 is using, right?
Gulp is, yeah.
The Angular 2 team is using Gulp.
What do you think about Yeoman?
So Yeoman's a generator for generating your template, and so we do need to talk. That's a good topic. So let's say we're going to go with Gulp if everybody's good with that. So
I say we try Gulp first.
Yeah, start with. All right.
Sounds reasonable.
All right, that's awesome. Be a good, definitely for the learning checkbox. That'll be good. So Yeoman's a template generator. A lot of the things that'll generate your whole template mean application use Yeoman, and so it's kind of 2 questions. What should our file structure and how should we organize the app? And should we use a existing Yeoman generator to do that?
I would say yes on the second part.
And is there one in particular that you like?
I currently contribute to mean.js. It's just mine. But there are, I know the reason the reason why I contribute because I know what they're lacking. So we might want to look into mean.io or full stack.
Yeah, I tried out mean.io. It seemed
there's a lot of baggage that comes.
I'm going to share the slides too, so I'll put them up there and make them publicly available. You guys will have them.
But then again, I didn't have like much experience with any other mean scaffolding systems. That's the only one I've tried so far.
So how about we make a task is to pick this for the next meetup?
Yeah, and also don't leave out just creating it on your own, because that is also a learning
Oh
experience.
yeah, good.
Because then you know, because when you start using those generators, I've noticed that each generator does things differently, so you end up like trying to figure out how they're doing it differently, and you can really burn tires on that.
That's true, because it's going to import all kinds of different stuff. And
Yeah, especially for the people that don't know the mean stack all that well. I could see that could be like, I don't understand what's going on, and now I'm giving up.
So I'll go into our meetup at the top level, and for each of these things, I'm going to create a different discussion thread. If one of these is interesting to you, then just jump on and discuss with folks. And does that sound good? And let's look between now, maybe in the next one, and see if there's what was the group chat?
Group me is what the guy asked. It was Greg Harrison.
Yeah, I actually made a chat room already. So if you guys want to jump in, the link is
on GroupMe?
Yeah.
Can you put it up in the NovaMe meetup?
Yeah, it's in the comment actually.
Okay, good. So a task then, we're going to check that out, and if we always want to move on to that, what's the one the Keystone guys were using?
What are you talking about?
Remember they said were having discussions about design, and they moved into some.
Oh.
Anyway, that's fine. That's great. Thank you for doing that.
I think Yeoman is YE code. I mean.
Yeah.
Cool. You guys, I'll even give you edit access, so if you feel free to correct the slides as well.
So last it also has a chat.
Hip chat. We do have hip chat too.
That's
Do you have to outside company or?
I don't know. Let's have a little bit of discussion about it.
Yeah,
I think an IRC is probably the best. Pre-node or something.
So just an action to just look at communication. I'll put that under process.
They got rid of Google Groups and that song. I can't remember what it was.
They still have communicated groups.
I got Keystone.
So what was we had the group .me. Is it .me?
Yeah.
And then we have hip chat. IRC.
Use Gitter.
Gitter?
Yeah.
G-I-T-T-E-R?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I've started using that lately on something else, in fact. I've never heard of it before.
All right.
Gitter's built into
Cool. We'll take a look at it. And so, yeah, we'll just have this as a point. I think there's enough discussion there. And I do want to be kind of cognizant of time, so things like that we're going to continue to go. Hosting environment. So we do need to talk about this. So I'm really talking about what cloud platform are we going to use? Amazon?
Azure.
Azure? Who said Azure? Have you used it?
Yeah, a little bit. We are doing some prototypes in Azure.
Cool.
Isn't that Microsoft though?
Yes, it is.
But they're supporting
It's the new Microsoft.
Okay, I don't want to offend anybody, but I mean, it's just my experiences in web development. I mean, IE is not exactly the best, browser to use. So I don't know if if I can say have a little reluctance to using Azure because of IE, but
I understand the concern.
Yeah, that's
But
just,
Azure, you don't have to be dependent on IE.
Yep.
It runs perfectly fine in Safari and
Oh, does it? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
Are we going to have like, if we use Azure, we get to like upload certificates and stuff for validation?
I don't think so.
No, it's very similar to like Google's Cloud or Amazon. I mean,
Who's used Azure? So 1, 2, 3 with Node and with Linux machines, or only Windows machines? Who's used Azure with Linux machines?
No, not. We use OpenStack.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, Azure is only Windows, or you can spin off Linux machine, but it does not have something like, for example, Elastic Bean or Google App.
Oh yeah.
So they do actually have a PaaS. The only thing I know is that the Microsoft SA contacted me a couple weeks ago and said, could he come speak at our meetup? And I was like, well, I don't think you guys do Linux, and we're Node and all that. And he pointed me back at a video, and so I walked through the video, and the guy went to Azure, created an account, said I want to deploy drop-down list, NodeJS app, put in his GitHub credentials, and the thing deployed and spin up a clustered environment. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not promoting that we should go to Azure. I would say that Amazon is 80% of what's out there, And so I can see perspective from learning something that AWS might still be the best to go with. And there's, what are the other Node.js ones? Heroku, what else? Nojitsu, there's another one. DigitalOcean, good, thank you. So there's...
OpenShift.
OpenShift even, yeah.
You've got the sticker on your computer, man. But you also have Amazon. So.
Well, but he's doing Java as well. So
we are doing everything actually. Software, Azure, AWS,
yep.
S3, S2, RDS.
And Amazon. Yeah.
The question was raised earlier about Docker, and that is eventually moving some of this into a Docker environment, and then in the perfect world, being able to try it in each of the platforms, each of the hosting systems, just to see what happens.
The MeeJS generator has
All right, hang on. One at a time.
Yeah. So where's our actual build machine going to be? Is it going to be on an AWS?
Well, it's going to be in the cloud. So I think in the cloud, I would suggest that we probably want to have a dev environment, maybe even a QA and a production environment. For cost, maybe we'll just have a dev, / demo environment and a production environment.
Well, I guess I was just thinking, like, if we were going to host, build servers and stuff on AWS, I don't just one account with one AWS account.
Any of these places, I think we could host a build server there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I do. Everything I don't know about Azure, so I'm assuming I would be very surprised if we couldn't do everything in one of those cloud environments, build server as well as. And so the other thing we've used for build server, I guess we didn't have it. We use something called CodeShip. .io or CodeShip.com now, and they're like a cloud build environment. In fact, you can do not just Node, but they plug into our Bitbucket, and they can go into GitHub too. Okay. And whenever we commit to our QA branch, they pull it out, they build it in their environment, which is probably on Amazon, but wherever it is, it's cloud, it doesn't matter. And then they push directly to Elastic Beanstalk. Yeah, do CodeShip.io, and it'll redirect you to their site. It's very nice.
It's .com now?
It is. It redirects to .com now, doesn't it?
It's definitely lost its coolness.
Yeah. But they're cool because it only took 20 minutes to set it up.
Yeah.
It deploys directly to Elastic Beanstalk, and it works so nice.
And it does the Mongo instance really well. Like, it just spins up a Mongo instance and runs all your tests.
So I'd say there's lots of things there. I would suggest that we want to pick the environment that we all feel as a group we most want to learn.
Can you build on AWS? Like, can you run chess on AWS?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
But you could use CodeShip with AWS too.
How do you do that on AWS? Without logging into the console and then running your grunt tasks that way?
No, AWS did a code build thing a while back. They announced a few months ago.
Dev something.
DevOps.
Yeah.
No,
I can't think of what it is, but
we could use CodeShip.
Right, yeah, CodeShip.
But let's not. That's separate, right? Any cloud environment's going to have that same issue. No cloud environment's going to do that. So we want to pick. Okay. I think. Does everybody agree we should pick the cloud environment that we want to learn? Is that a good way to choose it? Yeah. And so then AWS is definitely 80% of the market. Do we want to learn AWS as a broad group because that is the market-leading cloud provider?
No question about that. AWS is really good.
I don't know. I hear OS2 is coming back.
All right. So everybody's good with AWS? Anybody have?
I don't have any qualms. No.
Okay.
As long as we can build it. I mean, as long as it has a build and integration server or.
Well, we can just use CodeShip for that.
No, that's what he was saying. Just run it, and that's what he was saying. You don't have to use CodeShip.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll figure out. So where put how do we do build server new AWS service or.
Can you link it with a GitHub account and then run code on commits?
Oh, good. Great.
We've done all that.
Nice. Because we use CodeShip and that does that. Flawless. But I would like to see how AWS does it since we use it for 90% of the other stuff.
So that's the end of the slides. I think we're doing so well. We can have the GitHub account. We'll put the GitHub account up there. I was thinking we'd use pull requests. Is everybody happy using pull requests as a way of contributing? Yeah. Okay. And so in terms of commit access, we'll figure out what that means. We'll probably keep it with just a couple people to begin with, but I think as folks get in and folks are contributing, we can open that up a little bit as it makes sense. We'll still use pull requests, so there'll still be a code review process, in that I don't think we should be accepting our own pull requests. And if everything goes in a pull request and somebody else accepts them, and we'll figure that out as we go. If anybody has input into that, concerns, anything, we'll definitely make that work so that it works for everybody. And so we can get the GitHub up there. We'll get Jira going for that. We'll get the discussions going in terms of the different actions and what we're going to do. And I think we just set up a really nice agenda for the next time. So the next time, folks should be able to we should be able to walk out of the next meetup with some very basic stuff, just compiling and some things sort of running. Huh? The hello world. Very good. The hello world. Maybe not with PhoneGap or Cordova, all that kind of stuff, but a basic hello world that you can check out at GitHub, check in. We'll go over how to do pull requests if anybody wants some reviews on those. We'll have met with Donna, and Andre and I will have a report back from Donna and have her input. She might even be here. If not, she'll be here sometime in the next couple because she's excited about it. So any other kind of conversation input in terms of where we're going? Do folks like this work? Yeah. It's interesting? Enough to get people coming back?
Hopefully you're going to
We're punching each other.
framework and all that stuff in probably next session.
Yes, so we'll do some of that between now and next session. So we'll be reviewing, and then I'd like to see at least half the time next time actually breaking out, building, folks getting stuff running on their computers, folks saying this is what I want to get into, so I'm going to go work on these tickets or user stories, maybe in pairs or in threes, and we'll add more structure to it as we go, but I think that's probably enough to get started for the next one.
I think the main thing is picking a generator, if we're picking one.
Yep.
That'll be the main base.
So thank you for everybody for coming, and remember, I don't have a lot of speakers. I'll definitely work on it. Doug and I both will, but if you have anybody who wants to do a talk for just half an hour, just so that we are having some kind of input from like 7 to 7:30 that's not this project related, that's really welcome. Feel free to just post it up. You can email Doug and I or put it on the meetup to the leaders, whatever you want, or just talk to us. Thanks everybody for coming. Yeah.
So one last thing that I thought of that we didn't actually talk about is JSLint or JSHint, and how shall we configure it?
Very good. So, I mean, I think as we put in the Yeoman generator and bring all that together, we'll figure that out. But I think those kinds of things might even be good as that 7 to 7:30 time frame. Maybe take one or two of those topics, and a couple people that are interested, maybe on the discussion group, say, hey, can you guys talk about the pros and cons of which way we go, and like I did, facilitate the conversation. I'll be quiet, we'll have some other guys get up there. And that'll... Someone's always got to have an opinion. That's cool. That's cool. Thanks, everybody. All right, thanks. Very good. Very good. See you online.